Bhaktivedanta Chiruka Maharaj Katha. Acharya Pravishta Vishnu Parasta Tarasata Shishimad Bhakti Vigan Bharti Maharaj Ki Jai. Acharya Pravishta Vishnu Parasta Tarasata Shishimad Bhakti Vigan Keshava Swami Maharaj Ki Jai. Acharya Pravishta Vishnu Parasta Tarasata Shishimad Bhakti Rakshakshi Shridhar Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Acharya Pravishta Vishnu Parasta Tarasata Shishimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Acharya Pravishta Paramahatsa Srila Gokishodas Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Acharya Pravishta Satchidananda Bhakti Vedanta Ki Jai. Acharya Pravishta Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Acharya Pravishta Shri Gauri Vedanta Charya Srila Balaji Vijabhushan Prabhu Ki Jai. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur Ki Jai. Vedanta Srila Shamananda Prabhu Jai Ki Jai. Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Srila Sanatan Bhattacharya Srijiva Gopal Bhattadas Swami Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Srila Damodara Ramananda Sri Gopal Sri Ki Jai. Ramacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Radha Gadadhara Sri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Haridev Mayapur Shri Madhuri Pajamati Bhajari Kalari Pajari Tarati Bhajari Udita Gopal Krishna Vidya Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopi Gopala Vasudhara Krishna Padmanabha Ki Jai. Shri Shama Kali Radha Kali Nidana Tulsi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Yogamaya Pranavasi Ki Jai. Gopishwar Mahadev Ki Jai. Jagannath Baladev Subhati Sudasan Chakrati Ki Jai. Shri Purushottam Chaitra Ki Jai. Shri Bhagavan Ki Jai. Bhakti Prabha Shri Pranad Maharaj Ki Jai. Bhaktavan Shri Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Ki Jai. Sarvata Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Vitar Gaur Premanandi Hari 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 Bol. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jataha Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahabhadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaura Trishe Namaha Nityanandam Namastubhyam Prem Ananda Pradayane Kalo Kalamashanashaya Janavapataye Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpati Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Bhaktya Vihina Aparadha Lakshay Kittascha Kamari Tarangamadye
Kripa mai tvam sharanam prapanna brinde namaste charanarvindam brindayai tulsi devyai priyai keshavasya cha Krishna bhakti prade devi satyavachai namo namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. First of all, I'm offering my unlimited Dandavat Pranams and my Shraddha Pushpanjali at the lotus feet of my most worshipable beloved Gurudev Nitya Leela Pravishta Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Ashtatarashata Sri Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada. That I'm offering my same unlimited Dandavat Pranams and my Shraddha Pushpanjali at the lotus feet of my most worshipable beloved Siksha Gurudevs, Nitya Leela Pravishta Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Asto Tarasata Sri Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj. And Nitya Leela Pravishta Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Asto Tarasata Sri Srila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. I offer my Dandavat Pranams to the lotus feet of all my Sri Sri Rupa Nuga Guru Varga, and especially at the lotus feet of Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada, whose book we are studying, Sri Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the Nectar of Devotion. Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutani Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. And my Dandavat Pranams to all the Vaishnavas and all the Vaishnavis. So yesterday we finished the preface of the Nectar of Devotion. And that was quite some experience. I myself admit that I was astonished, And really, what Srila Prabhupada, he's the empowered personality. This is the proof. What comes from his pen, what comes from his lotus mouth, Each and every pure, exalted Braj Rasik Mahabhagavad Vaishnava, they all have the unique characteristics which are their personal qualities. And each one is different. No two are exactly alike. But one thing that is there in all of them is the pure devotion, Shuddha Bhakti, and on very high levels. So, Srila Prabhupada, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, he practiced under the instructions of his spiritual master to prepare himself. He wrote articles, we can see, in English language. He was practicing through his householder years to one day fulfill that mission. But yet, he was in family life, grihastha, supporting family. But Krishna had a different plan, because it became painfully obvious that now is time to give up this material occupational duties. And that's why Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur kept coming to him in dreams. Now you must take sannyas. And we know the history and the stories, how Srila Sridhar Maharaj was at his very own residence there when he woke up in the middle of the night and came to Srila Sridhar Maharaj and told him about the dream. And then Srila Sridhar Maharaj discussed everything with him, told him to wait for some time, don't act so quickly. But very shortly after, he had the same dream again, and he came to Srila Sridhar Maharaj again and expressed to him. That's in the Mula Prakriti's book. And then the next day, Srila Sridhar Maharaj says, he was gone. He didn't even take anything with him. An example for the conditioned souls and how their service manifests from their position. Look at Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, who remained within family life right up until a couple of years, 2 or 3 years before his entering Nitya Lila. And he had also accepted the dress of renunciation from Srila Gorky Srila Das Babaji Maharaj. And he closed himself off from the public, just became completely internally absorbed in the pastimes of Radha and Krishna, in his internal seva as Kamala Manjari. You know, so our Srila Prabhupada, he was eternal associates of Radha and Krishna and Gauranga Mahaprabhu, and our Gurudev, and so many other exalted Vaishnavas. They make their contribution according to the will of the Lord. Some preach very extensively and play the role of Gosyanandi or Viviktanandi. And some moment he met Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. You have to admit that this is pretty amazing that he saw that within him from the first moment. And he pursued that his entire life, giving these books to the world. What a responsibility. Imagine he must have felt. Because he knows that, yes, there was an attempt to go to the West by his Scott brothers in the 1930s, but it didn't produce much result. Some, substantial result. Yes, a couple came, even a couple of German persons became disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, came to visit. You see in the photo, when Ban Maharaj, Bhakti Hridaya Ban Maharaj arrived, it's in the train station, and there's a whole big group photo. And you can see those two Westerners with turbans, and they've been brought. So that was certainly an accomplishment. But the broader mission from that time, after the departure of Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, not much happened. 1936, 46, 56, 66. 30 years went by. And it was kind of, there was a sense of being defeated in this attempt. But nevertheless, Srila Abhay Charanaravinda Prabhu, taking sannyas from Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Maharaj, and who told him, unless you take sannyas, you will not be able to preach as you have been instructed. You must take sannyas. And that began his focused effort to produce Srimad Bhagavatam, to go to the West, somehow or other. And even in the meantime, as he was kind of trying to go to the West, an opportunity arose that he could go to, I think it was Japan or one of those Oriental countries. And so therefore he took, okay, Krishna's will. And then he started to produce a book that would be suitable for that language and those people, their culture, their background. And he chose one chapter of the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. You know the chapter, that's what it is, Description of Autumn. And there's so many analogies there. And we know that when we look at the Chinese type original art, it has particular style and flavor and mood and all of that. So he commissioned a couple of Indian artists to paint some paintings, and he wanted to produce that as a book. It never got published at that time because the direction changed then, that he could go to America. But in the meantime, he was ready to go anywhere, just to launch it, you see. Amazing intensity of his determination. Later it was published. I think Tamal Krishna Maharaj was tasked with the responsibility to try to start penetrating into China. And so that manuscript was taken, and then they actually got Chinese artists to paint. And we have that book printed by the BBT. What's it called? Light of the Bhagavat, right?
I think so.
Yeah, the Light of the Bhagavat. So, you know, but imagine how much responsibility Srila Prabhupada felt producing really the first English rendition of the bona fide Gaudiya Vaishnava Siddhanta coming from the Acharyas of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's line to the whole world, presenting that. And that's why it was so powerful, and that's why it made devotees, and still does to this day. So Srila Prabhupada's uncanny ability to convey, this is the thing about him. I think he must be, well, we know that he's Shaktivesh avatar of Nityananda Shakti, you know. But yet, if we were to put a couple of, I don't know, letters after his name, like they do in the universities, you get certain degrees, you get certain letters. So I think for Srila Prabhupada, it's like a mystic power. Absolutely. Mystic power. How he could take a, you know, inaccessible, very high subject matter and present it to a normal, regular man on the street, human being, you know? And that's the thing. We got to experience that these last few days, reading the preface. And not only that, Prabhupada was basically like, you know, in the marketplace of the holy name, Nityananda, that song about the marketplace of the holy name in Godruma. Yes. And how Nityananda Prabhu is the proprietor of the marketplace. And he's examining each person who's coming, right? He's examining them and he's determining them, just like a vendor will look at you when you come, but you don't know what he's thinking about you. When you come to a vendor, you know, he's sizing you up. Even the devotees in the airports, when they sold Prabhupada's books, they would size up the people coming off the planes, coming down the hallways. They had certain nicknames for different persons who just got off of their basic training in a military camp, because they used to be very open and they had money in their pockets. They just got paid. And the Shraddha is actually the currency that will enable that person to purchase the holy name from the marketplace of the holy name, right? So that's the currency. But he's examining how much of this currency they have, Nityananda, right? And he's giving in exchange for that a certain degree of Harinam. So what does that mean? That he's giving a certain degree, a certain level of Harinam. Not everybody's getting the same Harinam from Nityananda Prabhu in the marketplace. They're getting the Harinam according to their Shraddha, their faith. We were just a few minutes ago discussing with Govinda Didi, right? We were discussing one of the shlokas that she's going to be painting on the wall there. And it's the famous shloka, Mahaprasadi Govinde Nama Brahmani Vaishnave Svalpa Punyavatam Rajan Vishvaso Naivajayate. So here it says Svalpa Punya, Svalpa Punyavatam. That means those who have very small amount of pious credits, Svalpa Punya, they will not be able to have a Vishvasa. Vishvasa means, it means faith, Vishvas, belief. But Vishvas also means firm faith. Yes, Vishvasa Naiva Jayate. So, what does that mean? We were discussing that. And the fact of the matter is that even Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, he makes differentiation between 4 categories of pious persons and 4 categories of impious. Duskritina. You know those 2 verses in the 7th chapter? Chaturvida bhajante mam jana sukriti no arjuna arto jigyasur artarti jnani cha bharatarshava. So what is he telling there? He's saying there are 4 different categories of persons who are pious. Sukritina. He says Chaturvida bhajante mam. There are 4 kinds of pious persons who worship me. Bhajante mam means they will worship me. Jana sukritina arjuna. They are sukritina. That means they possess sukriti. What are they called? What are the divisions? Arto, jigyasur, arti, jnani. 4. Each one of these is progressively more pious and more intimately connected with Krishna. But each one of them, they have some faith. And therefore they worship the Lord. They may worship him for ulterior purposes, but they're worshiping. Right? So what are those 4 categories? Arto.
That's one, material well-being.
Yeah, material wealth and benefits, material benefits. And we see that on every level of every religion, you've got the people that they're coming to pray and to perform yagyas or whatever, so that they can get some material benefit bestowed upon them. So they have faith that they're praying to an authoritative being who can give to them. Yes. So we see that in Christianity. And Prabhupada used to say, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Yes. So Prabhupada is making the point that they have faith that God is providing, which He is. It also tells, no rain, no food. Therefore, everyone must do sacrifice, because the rains are controlled by the demigods who respond to sacrifice for Vishnu. They are duty bound to give if someone is performing Vishnu Yajna, sacrifice for Supreme Lord Vishnu, without tapasya. Tapasya means undergoing something hardship for the purpose of gain, spiritual gain especially. Then it's true tapasya. So the general persons, the general population, they would basically have a pious nature, but because in modern society there's so much very bad association, and whatever they're hearing, whatever they're seeing, whatever they're interacting with, it is more and more degrading for their consciousness. You see? If you look at television commercials or little, weekly television series from the 1950s, it's like squeaky clean in comparison to now. It's really, really different. And it becomes more and more degraded as the time goes by. But yet, Mahaprabhu is also using this time period to usher in a very powerful spiritual period where the people will be very seriously inquiring. Because when suffering is there, then they turn to God. Oh God, save us. And this is good. So, anyway, I was just explaining about faith. I was on that topic. And the 4 different divisions: those who are looking for wealth, those who are just inquisitive, jigyasura, those who are in very great suffering, arta arti, they're called, arta arti. They're experiencing the pain of material suffering. And then the 4th category, jnani. Jnani means, in this context, one who is actually searching for knowledge of the absolute truth. And it's described there. The jnani is the best of all of these 4. Krishna himself is telling, he is very dear to me amongst these 4. Why? Because he's not asking for some other external thing. He wants to know me. He wants relationship with me. So when devotees, when jivas come to the movement of Krishna consciousness, they fit into one of these 4 categories. And as they advance, when they acquire tattva siddhanta, when they become conversant with tattva siddhanta, conclusive knowledge of the absolute truth, then that becomes the prime motive. Because ultimately that leads to love and affection. Ultimately. And Krishna says that. After many, many lifetimes. You know that verse? Yes. What's the Sanskrit again? Huh? No, this is a Gita shloka. Bahunam janmanam ante jnanavan mam prapadyate. So, this verse is a very key, important verse. Bahunam janmanam ante. That means after many, many lives, births and deaths. Janmanam ante. After many, many, many lives, then he says, Jnanavan mam prapadyate. A person who becomes full of knowledge, proper knowledge, mam prapadyate, he surrenders to me. What is the symptom of his knowledge? What has he come to understand that is propelling him to surrender to Krishna? Vasudeva sarvam. Vasudeva sarvamiti. Samahatma sudurlabha. Vasudeva sarvam means he has come to realize everything is Krishna. Everything is Krishna. He sees Krishna within everything. Vasudev, who has manifested the entire creation. It is his energy, it is him. And he sees that. He's come to realize that. So Krishna says, Sa Mahatma Sudurlabha. Such an advanced personality, a great soul, a Mahatma, he is very rare. You don't find them here, there, and everywhere. They are very rare in human society. So, the adverse side of those who are in the other category of 4 different types, which Krishna points out. Forgetting how the verse begins. He says, Mudha prapadyante naradhama avajananti. No, wait. No, that's a different verse. The same, the word mudha, foolish person, is there in the first line. Manusim, no. Mudha prapadyante naradhama mayaya aparitagyana asuram bhavam ashrita. Oh, okay. Namam duskritino mudha. So na means not. Namam duskritino mudha prapadyante. Though there are categories of persons who don't surrender to me, na prapadyate. They don't surrender to me. They'll never accept God. They'll never surrender to God. And these are progressively more and more hardcore atheist. The first category is just mudha. What is a mudha? You've heard this word before, mudha? You know what it means? Mudha.
Foolish person?
Yeah.
Like an ass?
Yeah, that's the example is given. The like foolishness like an ass, who gets kicked every time he approaches his wife. She kicks with her hind legs. Like this. That's that whole, what we call ass tattva, which is always told by Bang Maharaj in Talvan. So, but a mudha just means foolish person. However, they are in the category of duskritina. The other category is what? Sukritina, sukriti. And this is the opposite, duskriti. Sukriti, duskriti. They have acquired impiety. Progressively, over many lifetimes, they've acted very impiously, and now they have a certain temperament which is atheistic. They don't believe there is a supreme controller. So the first category is just ordinary foolish persons. They can be turned gradually. That's one of our target audiences. We have a lot of different types of target audiences when we preach, but that they can also be dealt with because they're just foolish. They're devoid of knowledge and they're devoid of sukriti. So now they have to be given some sukriti. That's what we do. The Hare Krishna movement, going onto the streets, we understood this fact because Prabhupada made it very clear that just by standing on a street corner with a group of devotees and chanting for hours. You know, thousands of people are walking by. They're hearing. They're in contact with the sound. And what are they getting from that? Big time bhakti unmukha sukriti. They don't know it. It's agyata sukriti. It's unknown to them. No matter what they think, or even they laugh and joke and look at those funny people and this and that, they're getting sukriti. And that powerful vibration going all over the world, even Gurudev said that about right here on this little tiny hilltop, right? What did he say? Does anyone remember what Gurudev told? Gurudev told about what is happening in these gatherings where he is speaking, right there in the pavilion. Right next to Damodar Prabhu's passenger doorway of his motorhome, about 5 feet away from where Gurudev sat. So what did Gurudev say about, I don't know if you can remember because you were kids then, or if you've heard these quotations since then, but he one time mentioned about, he says, we are sitting here and we are speaking this Katha. And it is going up into the atmosphere. Srila Maharaj, he also spoke about this. How the sound vibration enters into what? The sky. The ethereal element, ether. That's called Akash. And what happens to that sound? Srila Maharaj said, a war begins. With all of the false, impious, cheating vibrations that have also entered within the ethereal atmosphere. And they are destroying. These powerful spiritual vibrations are going to war and destroying them. Purifying the atmosphere. You know, Uddhava, Sri Uddhavaji, his prayer to the gopis at the end of his association with them in Braj. How does that one begin again? Srila Bhakti Bhavatirtha Maharaj used to say it in his Mangala Charan every time he would speak. He's talking about how these Braja Gopis, they are singing these transcendental songs like Gopi Geet and so forth. And I am paying my obeisances to that sound vibration, which is going up into the ethereal atmosphere and doing what? Purifying the whole earth. Try to remember the Sanskrit. So, Srila Gurudev said that these sermons that we are giving, they will be remembered into the future for thousands of years. So the power of these sound vibrations can purify even an atheistic person. We see in Gaur Leela so many examples, in Nityananda Prabhu, and how they are purifying all the fallen souls. Patitanam pavanebhyo, the uplifter, the savior, the purifier of the patitas. So Krishna has a plan for the jivas, how he's going to give them necessary sukriti to come to him. And that's why there are two types, agyata and gyata sukriti. Because how can the animals get benefit? They're not qualified to participate in the process of self-realization in that body. They're not qualified. They cannot. But how do they get benefit? Through these ways. Through kirtan, through prasadam, right? Even through the affection of the devotees. They're doing their job. That's their seva. They bark at night. No? That's their seva. They don't know that they're doing seva, but they know that they're getting food from barking. You see? So Krishna arranges for the jivas in the lower species to acquire piety. Did you hear that, Govinda? Krishna arranges for them. And then, after they've acquired a certain amount of piety, we used to say that, oh, if a dog or any animal or insect or whatever gets Mahaprasadam, oh, they immediately get a human birth in their next life. We used to say that. I haven't found yet a praman, but I'm sure it does happen.
They used to say that, do you remember Tilak, the dog that was here when Gurudev was here?
Right, yeah.
They used to say that Tilak took birth as one of his children.
One of
the children, it was just the joke.
That
Gurudev was so affectionate.
Yeah. One of the children where? Here, in New Braj, or anywhere.
I think the joke was here.
Yeah, but you know what? That's really not, it's not an exaggeration at all.
Gurudev was very, very affectionate to that.
No, I mean, once they're in the body of a dog, which is very high up, just before the human birth, you know, there's monkey, dog, and tiger. You know, 3 different animals.
Wasn't it cow?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Cow, monkey, and tiger. Yeah. But, you know, I think tiger, dog, carnivorous creatures, you know, from that position, especially if they've lived their whole life in the association, there's no question. There's not even a question that they get a human birth, okay? And probably a devotee birth, you know? Huh?
Like Dharma.
Like Dharma will, yes, for sure. Dharma certainly will, you know? So, Krishna arranges to give this punya to the living entities, life after life. And that brings them eventually to sadhu sangha. That's the thing. And in sadhu sangha, they get what? Bhakti Lata Beach. So it's true. I've thought about this verse when we say the shloka before taking prasadam. Everybody loves to say that shloka, but I don't think that practically anyone is meditating on the actual meaning of it. What it means is, within a few moments, we're going to be tasting Mahaprasadam. That's the meaning. Mahaprasadi Govinde. It's a very joyful song that everybody sings. But here's the thing, that what's being stated there is very, very true. Because we see in Mahaprabhu's pastimes, his Leela, the importance of Mahaprasadam, the mood of taking Mahaprasadam. Many of our acharyas have also spoken about that, you know. And the ability, the capability of someone to have firm belief in the transcendental nature of this foodstuffs that has been offered to Radha and Krishna. You know, Sri Aniruddha Prabhu, he gave a very nice method of taking prasadam. And I've actually sat across from him while he's taking prasadam. And he says a couple of prayers, takes water in his hand and circles the water around the plate. Usually it's a leaf plate in India, like that, you know, and a little bit on the preparations. And then they chant a prayer, and Sharira Vijajal and everything. Then everyone begins to take prasadam. So what he does is he doesn't speak at all during prasadam. And he is meditating on how this Mahaprasadam plate is like the Rasa Mandala. It's a transcendental Rasa Mandala. And he says we should try to chant 8 Mahamantras with each mouthful. Jeez. Yeah. So see, when someone is on a higher level of realization, then their meditation is completely different. You see? So, that's the meaning of that verse. And, Govinda was concerned that if we put it on the wall and then new people come, because in the translation it says they can never have Vishvasa Naiva Jayate. This great Vishvasa and firm belief can never come to them. But I told, no. It only means they don't have the realization how this is transcendental yet. So this firm belief that this is absolutely transcendental, every single scrap. I mean, nobody will dare to say that Jagannath Mahaprasadam ever becomes contaminated. Even the topmost Brahmin who will not touch anything touched by a Shudra or this or that, they will take Mahaprasadam off the ground of Jagannath Mahaprasadam because they have that firm faith. You know, and also Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya performed a pastime after he was converted by Mahaprabhu. At that point, he was so overwhelmed with praying, and Mahaprabhu revealed his four-armed form to him and also his six-armed form. And he was changed into a Vaishnava, and all of his tendencies toward Mayavadism, all the years and years of scholarship and lecturing on Shankaracharya's Mayavad impersonal philosophy and this and that, left his heart completely, to the extent he could not tolerate even to say the word mukti. Because it's all about mukti, right? Liberation, liberation, liberation. But he couldn't say the name mukti. And you know the verse, Tatenu kampam susamikshamano, bunjana evat kritam vipakam, hridvag vapurbir vidadan namaste, jiveta yo muktipade sadayabak. But he could not utter the word mukti. So he changed it to bhakti pade. And Mahaprabhu was very happy to see this. But one time Mahaprabhu tested him right after that conversion, and he came early with Mahaprasadam, early in the morning, as Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was just arising from bed. He hadn't showered, nothing, and then he brought this Mahaprasadam to him. What did Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya? Generally, there's such a Brahminical, they would not touch prasadam until they had bathed and everything else, right? But he had now, this faith became so powerful and so strong that immediately he took this Mahaprasadam. And Mahaprabhu was very happy. See? So this is a very big...
I've conquered the world. Remember you said I've conquered the world because Sarvabhauma...
Ah, yes, okay. Yes. Vishvasa Naiva Jayate. So just to complete, I was going to start reading the introduction, but we're going to do that tomorrow. You want to do that? You want to read the introduction? Yeah. What I'm starting to think is that this introduction is probably at least twice as long as the preface, but really also amazing. So what I'm thinking is we're going to study this, and then we're going to also go into the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu Bindu. And kind of like we're going to, in tandem, we're going to kind of jump back and forth between these two books. That will really be exciting. Yeah. We'll hear Prabhupada, then we'll hear Gurudev and the other acharyas. So what are the other three duskritina that Krishna speaks about in that verse in the Gita? Amam duskritino mudha.
Those who are in distress.
Prapadyante naradhama. What's naradhama?
Lowest of mankind.
Yes, nara means human being, mankind. And adhama means lowest. Naradhama. Then mayaya apahrita jnana. One whose knowledge, his jnana, has been stolen by illusion, maya. Maya, by maya, by illusion, apahrita jnana, knowledge has been stolen. And it's very interesting, the purport of Prabhupada explaining each one of these four types of persons in his Bhagavad Gita purport to that. We'll also read that another time. Maya, aparita jnana, and the last one, yes, asura bhavam ashrita. This is as hardcore as you can get. That means the nature of a demon, asura bhava, the nature of an asura, this particular jiva has become completely surrendered and taking full shelter. Ashrita, asura bhavam ashrita. He is taking full shelter of the demoniac nature. So, these kind of individuals, especially the last one, and even the one before that, the Madhyam Adhikaris, they generally avoid them. Madhyam Adhikaris, you know, they have 4 different ways of reciprocating. Maitri Kripa Apeksha. Yeah, Prema Maitri Kripa Apeksha. Apeksha means to neglect, to ignore. So, for the Madhyam Adhikari, for those kinds of atheistic persons, the Madhyam Adhikari will actually avoid them. But what does it mean? Does it mean that he hates them? This is very important to understand. No, the Madhyam Adhikari is seeing the jivas equally, but he still discriminates between these 4 categories, right? And he deals with each category. The Madhyam Adhikari does. But when the Madhyam Adhikari is neglecting the atheistic persons, it's for their benefit. Because otherwise, the interaction will cause them to commit more offenses and so forth. So therefore, he avoids them. But what does the Uttam Adhikari do? He actually sees no difference. He sees that all are serving Krishna. Pretty amazing. Such a vision. That all is okay, everything is harmonized, all the living entities are serving Krishna. He sees that, and therefore he doesn't preach. So, okay, now we know that the Mahaprasadi Govinde verse is a very good verse to have on the Prasadam room wall. And in the future, those who are newer persons, we can show them this verse. We can say, you know what? By your taking this Mahaprasadam, you're going to get lots of Sukriti. Gaur Premanande. Jai Srila Rupa Goswami Pada Ki Jai. Jai Shri Shri Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande. Vansa Kalpatarugascha Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo